Welcome to the Progress Podcast. My name is Selah, and I'm an alcoholic. I need help.
Right.
I recognize that I'm struggling in
Right.
this area, and I just need some help and accountability. I don't know if I need to go to rehab. Maybe I need to go to a meeting.
Right.
How can you support me?
Tell me what you're waiting for, the best is all for you. I gotta pray some more since I come home to you. I had to line it up, and they say we shouldn't shine it up, but that's just how his timing was, and look at what we do. They cannot tell me nothing, baby, the way you walk, I love it. And if you take too long, I'm rushing. I come to where you are, just trust it. Then we gon' love forever, and we gon' ride this thing together. I got my mind on you whenever, I keep my eyes on you forever. Man, we got the kind of love that says for words.
Welcome to the Progress Podcast. My name is Selah, and I'm an alcoholic. On today's episode, I'm going to share my experience, strength, and hope. In other words, I'm going to tell you how the heck I got to full-blown alcoholism and how I am working my recovery program daily. I am now 4 years, 8 months sober,
Yes.
and I am so excited to share what God is doing in my life. I am joined by my amazing husband and best friend, who I would not be here without, Russell. Welcome, honey.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, thanks for coming to my podcast.
Happy to be
Just
here.
kidding.
Happy to be here. It's been such a joy to walk with you,
Thank you.
and to be a part of this journey. I had a stage intervention, and so we're going to get into that. But what we want to start with, of course, as we always do here on the Progress Podcast, is start with the Word of God. And we're going to start today in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19. It reads, "Look, I'm about to do something new. Even now it is coming. Do you not see it? Indeed, I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." And indeed, let me tell you, as we approach 10 years of marriage, the Lord has done and continues to do a new thing in this woman, and as a result, in our marriage. And it's just
Amen.
been so beautiful. And I'm really, it's been an honor to walk with you through it.
Thank you.
And I'm really grateful for your courage and your willingness to share this here, because it's not something we talk about nearly enough
No.
when it comes to alcoholism and sobriety and addiction comprehensively. And we'll touch on that too, but really want to talk about alcohol, and it's so prevalent in our society.
Very much. So Labor Day of 2018, Russell told me he lied to me, y'all, about what we were doing and where we were going.
Sorry.
And when I walked into my parents' house, there were family members there, and he had staged an intervention. So why don't you share a little bit about how you had the courage to do that and how you got to that
Sure.
point?
It became clear to me that what I was living through was unmanageable. And your father had just passed away
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks prior to the intervention. And I had coffee with your brother in that space, and we both recognized it. And so I agreed to take action. I agreed to lead on it as your husband, as someone who had been in intimate spaces to see what had happened. And so got your mother involved as well, which was so beautiful. And we staged an intervention.
Yeah.
We were going to a barbecue. I think it was for Labor Day weekend.
It was.
So it had been a couple weeks since your father passed. And you had your bottle of wine in the car.
I
and
did.
let you
I was ready.
Get it. You ready
I was
to
ready.
party. And we, stopped by your mom's apartment real quick on the way to the gathering. And you said surprised, but you weren't that surprised.
Yeah, I kind of
But-
knew when I walked in the door that the gig was up. I knew I'd seen intervention before. I knew, I think you had said, we're going to play some games. And I'm like, what the heck is he? Right as we were going in. And I was like, oh, no, this is not. It was really scary. And you said some really hard things to me that I think you had tried to say, but I wasn't at a place that I could hear them. Either I'd already been drinking and you had said them to me, or
Sure.
I just was so deep in my addiction, I wasn't ready to listen.
Yes. I definitely made the mistake of trying to confront things in real time, which usually was at night
Yeah.
when you had been drinking. And
Yes.
it's really only been in recent years I've understood to the extent that you were drinking. And so I didn't know what I was dealing with when I was trying to speak to you and understand and correct you, or however you may want to look at it. We did argue, but it was certainly unsuccessful.
Yeah. So the first step in most, or if not all, recovery programs is to admit that your life has become unmanageable. And I think that's what you realized in staging that intervention, is that it had become unmanageable
Yes.
for you.
Yes.
And you didn't even know that was the first step. But as an alcoholic, I had to do the work around that first step. But you recognized it before I recognized it. And alcoholics normally don't recognize it.
Right.
It's someone else that recognizes it, a family member, a friend, somebody else, because I mean, I've said it to you before, and it hurts a little bit, but it was the truth. Alcohol was my best friend.
Right.
And it was what I thought about all the time. And so I wasn't going to just give that up on my own.
Right.
I needed help.
Right.
I needed help.
So I
for
definitely
sure.
had to recognize that I had to go first.
Yes.
Which I didn't realize that's what I was doing. Right. I wasn't familiar with the 12-step program, but I had to truly go first and recognize it had become my manager when your brother was helpful in that. And I certainly, it came from a perspective as a business owner. We talked about that a few weeks ago, of trying to do things in my own strength. And one of the things I was trying to do in my own strength was, of course, figure out how to make my business work, as we talked about, but also figuring out how to make my marriage work, where realizing my wife was, kind of going in the wrong direction
I was
in
sick.
her health. Yeah, and your
I was
health.
sick.
Mhm.
Alcoholism is a disease.
Right.
A lot of people don't want to admit that
Sure.
or don't recognize that it is, but it is a disease.
Right.
And coming to understand that is eventually what helped me get sober. So let's talk about it. You recognized it. You staged this intervention for me, and I went to rehab the next day. I went to outpatient rehab, and it was really hard. At first, I thought that they were going to try to send me away. There was a little discussion about that,
Right.
and that was just terrifying for me, to be away from you and our kids. Now, I will say, in hindsight, looking back, there are times I wish I would have gone away. I think that if I was giving myself advice 6 years ago, when I first, 2018, when I came into this journey, I would have said, go away. You need the break. You need the reset. But it just wasn't feasible for us at the time. So I went to outpatient rehab every day, 4 days a week, hours on end, and still maintained a full-time job at the same time. And so I was really committed to that. In rehab, it was a place I'd never been, like I've never been in trouble, really, like never been arrested, nothing like that. So being in rehab was challenging, because it was like a lot of rules, a lot of what you can and can't do. I couldn't take my purse in the bathroom. They almost treat you like you've done something wrong,
Right.
and honestly, in there were a lot of people who were court appointed,
Right.
job appointed, were in some trouble.
Right.
So I get that, but they just treated us all like that. And so that was challenging. In rehab, we lost a couple of people. We lost 2 people I was in rehab with, and that was really challenging, because I don't think people realize that alcoholism is such a deadly disease. I didn't realize it. I'm
Right.
like, oh, it's fun. Let's have a drink. Shots, all the thing. And you don't realize how many people truly die of alcoholism. A lot of times when there's no reason given,
Yeah. Late night car crash.
Somebody
lost
they had
control.
a car crash. Someone,
Yeah.
there was a deer. They swerved from hitting. Do you know how many people say there was no deer? But they say there was a deer, so it's definitely a deadly disease if it's not treated.
And I'll say, you've been in the rooms, specifically, I've been in the room as well, in the rooms.
When he says the rooms,
Yes.
y'all, that's the rooms of AA.
Alcohol,
So
AA
is Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yes.
And there are rooms for anything: Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Codependency Anonymous. There's a
Right.
lot of different spaces that are just recovery and support, And so mine is AA, and we call it the rooms of AA. So yes, go
So,
ahead.
but I
Sorry.
want to say, those stories you're sharing, we've acquired that lens with literally watching the news or seeing things online, and of course, not being judgmental. And we don't have all the facts, but more times than you'd like to believe, alcohol is a contributing factor to many of these things that happen
Yes,
late at night, particularly motor vehicle accidents.
very much so.
Sometimes other things in other stories that we may share that you've heard in the rooms as well, that are really sad, of people losing their life because of alcohol,
Yep.
alcohol related. I know at least one person, I'm pretty certain, that I grew up with, who quite literally drank themselves to death and had organ failure. And we've heard those stories as well. So this is life and death stuff
It is.
we're talking about.
It is life and death.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's life and death accidentally.
Right.
There was a woman in my group, my AA group, who had 10 years of sobriety and had not drank in 10 years and had gone back out and started drinking. She had a life situation, and she drank one night, came home, drove into her garage, shut the door. She was so blackout drunk.
Right.
She shut the doors of her garage, but didn't turn off her car. And she fell asleep.
Right.
And she killed herself.
Yeah.
And I don't think she purposely killed herself. It was accidental, but it was attributed to alcohol.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's where some of these accidental deaths come in place. So little bit back to my recovery story and going through. So I went through rehab and then spent the next 18 months really trying to figure out if I was an alcoholic. And the reason why this part's important is that a lot of people that get sober or that get clean from an addiction are like, I got it on the first time and I did so great and look at me and da-da-da-da-da. That wasn't my story, y'all. I did not get it on the first time.
Right.
I struggled. I was not convinced I was an alcoholic. I did not think I was an alcoholic. You know, at one point I was like, I just need to drink water in between each glass of wine. So I'm going to have wine and then I'm going to have water and then I'm going to have wine and have water. You know, there was all these things. And then I told myself, well, you weren't educated on alcohol. So now that I'm educated and I understand how this plays a part in my mind, in my body, I won't overconsume.
Right.
All of that was a lie.
Right.
All of that was a lie. So in AA, we call it going back out to do more research. And that is kind of what I did. I had a few relapses and I felt like I could control this, or I'm not really an alcoholic. And it was hard because there were a lot of outside forces and people that I really love and care for in my life that don't understand the disease of alcoholism. So instead of getting support sometimes, like, girl, you got this, I won't drink with you tonight. I'm going to be your non-drinking buddy and we're going to have mocktails all night. I would not get that. I would get, so you're never going to drink again? Like ever? Like what about when your children get married, or what about on your next vacation, or what about, and I'm like, no, the plan is never. Like I have to tell people I'm allergic to alcohol. I have realized I have an allergy to alcohol.
Right.
And when I drink it, it makes me someone you don't want to see. So trust me, I have an allergy to alcohol. I just have had to come to that, but it took some relapses for me to get there. And I know that was really hard on you and on us because, to be honest, I lied.
Right.
I was just straight up liar.
Right.
You'd find alcohol and be like, where'd this come from? I'd be like, I don't know. As if there's any other adult in our house. There's not. And it's in a cabinet this high.
Our kids were like both under 4 or 5 years old. And so come on.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and I realized like if I'm doing that, like this is clearly still an addiction. I'm hiding from you.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of trust was broken during that time. And I know that that was challenging for you. So so much there I want to unpack. I think one thing you said that really strikes a chord with me is we believe that knowledge can save us. Yes.
Right. And of course the Bible says to get knowledge, but also get wisdom. And so we think knowledge is the key. If I can just learn enough, I can manage my own addiction. I can manage my own sin issue wherever I'm stuck in life and not really doing the work to truly be healed. Right. And that work is with God, but also that work is being in the rooms.
Yes.
It could be going to rehab. Right. And so that's really, something that jumps out to me that your first 18 months, you were learning and we were both learning, but the knowledge wasn't enough for us to really succeed.
And a lot of the times in those first 18 months, I became a little bit of a know-it-all because I went to rehab. I sat 4 hours a day and I learned everything. And I was such an expert. And you're not going to tell me.
And you weren't as bad as the people who were court appointed.
Oh, no, I was not bad. I didn't get there. That's not me. I made all of those excuses for why I could keep my addiction. And on the times that I did drink during the relapses that I had, in my heart and mind, I recognized it was getting worse every time.
Right.
It was getting more sneaky. It was getting worse. It was like, it was a disease of progression. It was progressing worse.
Yeah.
So like I was noticing that. So I want to stop and say my last drink was February 13th of 2020. And I want to kind of share what happened as I got to there and then what transpired from there, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So the 13th is our wedding anniversary.
Right.
And we had just returned from an anniversary trip and I had gone to get our dinner. And while I was at dinner, they offered me a glass of wine because the food wasn't ready. And they said, it's going to be a few more minutes. Would you like a glass of wine? And I said, yes. And then I had a second one. And when I came home, Russell knew. And I wasn't intoxicated to the point that you couldn't talk to me. Right. Yeah. So you just knew.
And I could look at you.
You could look at me.
And
you could
I
probably
could
smell.
Yeah. I knew the look and I knew the smell at that point.
And you were like kind of real tough with me and said some hard things to me and encouraged me to go back to a meeting and get my 24-hour coin. So in the rooms, most meetings, they give out coins for different lengths of continuous sobriety. And when you pick up a 24-hour coin, that kind of says, I am committing to getting back on. I have had a drink and it's been 24 hours or 1 month, and this is, you know, me basically making a declaration that I'm starting.
I just want to say she was mad.
Oh, mad. And he told me to bring the coin home.
Yeah, I said bring the coin home and give it to me.
Boy, bye.
Well, it came and was like,
here's your daggone coin.
It was like slammed it in my hand and then stormed upstairs. I'm sitting on the couch watching the game or whatever, and you were mad, but I was so happy. I was so happy
because I was
trying not to grin.
myself.
I was trying to grin and smile on your face at that moment. I understood what you were experiencing, but I was so happy that you agreed to do it, and that, you know, kind of goes back to, it was almost another intervention in a sense in that way. And I know one of the things I want to surface for anybody who's trying to figure out an intervention is, you know, alcoholism, to the extent there's a selfishness, right? That you know, in a lot of sin issues in life is really about how does it make me feel? How does this serve me? And we believe certain things are serving us well. But I think what I wanted you to do during the intervention, and 18 months later when you went back and got that last 24-hour coin you had to get, hopefully ever have to get, is to switch to selfishness. Switch from how does this serve me to realizing and acknowledging it doesn't serve you, but what will serve you even more is if you go get healthy.
Yes.
Right? If you do the work to go to truly be healed, if you can confess your sin and go do the work and find other people in community to be healed with, that you could in fact be your best self. And that's what my heart's desire as your husband, and I communicated that day to you in front of your family, was that we wanted that for you, and that not only did we want that for you, we wanted it for you to have that for yourself, but we also needed that for you. I needed that. I needed the best version of you that I see here in front of me today, and our children needed the best version of you. And as we've come over these last almost 5 years now, there's so many people that have been blessed to experience this best version of you now that we know. Some of them will be guests on the show eventually. And so
I never
thank
thought
you.
This version of me was possible.
Right.
I never did.
Yeah.
Ever in my whole life, even before, like, I didn't say this in the beginning, but I think it's important for our guests to know, for our audience to know, for clarity. I didn't pick up my first drink, have my first drink of alcohol until I was 32 years old.
Yeah.
Like, I started super late, but I quickly fell into an addiction. So I remember being in my 20s thinking, oh, I'll never have an addiction. I'll never, you know, and we'll get into it later, but my first husband was an addict. And I thought, oh, I would never get into that. Right. So discovering or picking up an addiction at 32 and just discovering that I have had somewhat of a life of addictions, and we will talk through that also, was really eye-opening to me. Before we go on, though, because I want to stick on the intervention for a second, a lot of people that may hear our story may say, that's so nice that he did an intervention. Oh, that's so kind. I don't have nobody to do that for me. Like, who's going to step up and do that for me?
Right.
I don't have a husband. I don't have anybody, but I know I'm struggling secretly. I've maybe Googled what's an alcoholic.
Right.
Hi, I've done that.
Yeah.
If you've Googled what's an alcoholic, you might be an alcoholic. I have done that many times. There's times I've gone to the doctors for things that I knew were probably related to alcohol.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you doing? And you're not even telling them you're drinking this much. So if you don't have someone in your life that could do that for you, I really want to encourage you to gather your friends, trusted family, faith community people, whoever you have. And it doesn't need to be a lot. You only had 4 people there the day that, and me, so 5, was the intervention. You don't need a lot, but I would encourage you to do something called a reverse intervention.
Okay.
And that is where you gather your people together, and you can do it with gathering, or you can call them individually. It doesn't need to be that serious. And say, I need help.
Right.
I recognize that I'm struggling in this area, and I just need some help and accountability. I don't know if I need to go to rehab. Maybe I need to go to a meeting.
Right.
How can you support me? And the importance of that is because James 5:16 says, confess your sins to be forgiven, but confess to one another to be healed.
Right.
And if you are just Googling or going to a doctor and not being honest like me, or just confessing to God, you're not truly going to be healed. You need other people. You need community.
And for someone if you're trying to do an intervention, I think one of the things that I was just in that early stage of building a relationship with your brother who had lived overseas for most of our marriage up until that point. And so with him and I had talked, he was able to share the perspective of the rest of your family who were recognizing your alcoholism in the context of your father's funeral and memorial service and everything that went on for like a week or so, a number of family events. And so I couldn't, even for me, I couldn't keep it a secret anymore that something I was trying to manage. So even for me, again, going first and acknowledging it, that it was unmanageable, I had to get in community and have other people say, yeah, we see it, what's going on. How bad is it really? And that's kind of more or less what your brother asked me. And I had to admit, yeah, it's bad. I've been talking to her about it. I've been trying to figure out, and now it's getting worse with the passing of your father. So again, it's a team sport.
It is.
We have to get help. We can't do this alone. You live in your own echo chamber. You're going to keep repeating the same pattern. So we need other people's help. We need community to get free, to truly get free.
So let me ask you a question, because I've done a lot of the talking about my recovery. You didn't marry me thinking you're going to marry an alcoholic.
No.
Like, you didn't walk down the aisle.
And there was no clue, by the way.
Oh, there was no clue.
Yeah.
No clue in the beginning at all, really.
No.
So how has this affected our relationship? What are some of the challenging moments for you during my recovery? I mean, I know I lied to you like a crazy person, so I know that definitely affected us, but what other things?
Yeah, certainly trust. I think sometimes, sometimes there were certain events where you drank too much, and there was situations that I had to manage, and it was, sometimes a little bit embarrassing, but I loved you and almost didn't care.
I'm sorry again.
I've forgiven you long ago. I don't even remember. I'm sure most
I
of
can
them.
think of one. We ain't gonna talk about it.
I can think of a couple too. Yeah, no need to rehash those. They're kind of sometimes funny in hindsight, but also could have been like much worse or much more dangerous, or physically, could have had a much different physical outcome. So I think the trust piece was really the biggest piece. Could I rely on you? Could I count on you? Right. I think the thing about when you went to get that 24-hour coin was were driving our kids. And that was the point that night I made to you. I said, I'm not going to let you, if you choose to continue to do this, I'm not going to allow you to endanger our children while you do this. And so if you had gotten pulled over, what could have happened? Maybe you would have been over the limit. Maybe you wouldn't have, but it was clear to me, I think an officer would have noticed that you were impaired, right? Whether you were, legally out drunk or not. And so that was risking your freedom. And then our kids have to have that memory. And that was the best case scenario of you, right? Potentially. So some people don't even get the chance to get pulled over and get help, right? Like we talked about a few minutes ago. So what do you want to, drive that point home? And that was the hardest part. Am I going to have to be a single dad? Is this, it was really kind of an inflection point for us. Yeah.
I know that for me, we talk about like in recovery, making an amends, and I had to make an amends with you and ask you to forgive me and be honest, but I had to live my amends. And I think that's the biggest thing that has helped us rebuild trust.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that I had to daily live my amends. I had to tell on myself, even a year ago, or when you found out about the blender situation, long story, we're not going to tell it, but I had to tell myself I was drinking and
things
blew
that
up a
happened
blender
7 or 8 years ago that I didn't realize she was intoxicated.
That I was drinking.
I thought she was
just thought I was ditzy. Just say it. Just thought I was ditzy.
Not because she's blonde, or maybe because she's blonde. But I'm like, this woman just doing stuff late at night, doing stuff because she's bored.
No, she was
drunk. And I'm cleaning up and helping fix it, and I had no idea.
So I've had to still even make an amends and apologize and be truthful when things have popped back up. I have can't let him think something that he's thought when I know the truth, that I've been dishonest about it. So trust, that's a really good one. Definitely
trust. I think sometimes stewarding you through the transition in relationships has been a challenge.
Yes.
I know before you got sober, there were friends you had that weren't good, and that was part of it as well. And then once you got sober, then you had to accept that those friendships weren't good. Yeah. And I had been saying it, but I could only say it but so many times before you would just get annoyed. And I had to I had to give you a little bit of a leash.
And it was hard because I had to recognize I had friends that were just drinking friends.
Right.
And I thought they were real
and they
friends.
were friends you've known well before me. And so I'm over here, I want to start judging your friends.
And then, then that's awkward for you because you're trying to, it feels like a little bit you were trying to put in a wedge in between lifelong friendships of mine. But I had to come to realize there was really nothing here outside of alcohol and fun and partying and that.
Yeah. Girls' nights at whatever restaurant.
So letting go of those friendships were really challenging for me because when you're in recovery, even your family and your good friends sometimes don't know how to act around you, and there's an uncomfortableness with them. And then your lifelong friends, you start realizing they're not good for you anymore. You start feeling a lot of insecurity. I don't know who's for me anymore. I don't know who is going to.
Am I going to still have friends?
Yeah. Am I going to be all alone? And my only friends going to be the ladies at AA, which they're great. But are those going to be my only friends? Maybe. It was very hard in the beginning to go through an addiction and recovery and losing friends at the same time. So thank you for navigating it through me, because I know it was probably annoying as I don't know what.
It was.
All
Again,
these
it was
worrying
a lot
about
of-
so-and-so.
It was a lot of patience. And I think the one thing that I know I always relied on, we had our commitment to each other.
Yeah.
And I know we've taken our own marriage assessment, right? And seen that we both are loyal and both committed. And so for me, that allowed me to have patience. To believe that, knowing how committed you were as well, that you would figure it out. So I had to give you patience, but it was hard. It was hard, and it was sometimes angering and sometimes scary a little bit too. To wonder,
I'm sure there were
were
times
you
you
gonna?
didn't think I would get it.
Yeah, I never considered that.
Really?
I never deeply considered it. No, I never deeply considered it.
Good.
I'm too much.
There were
of a-
times I didn't think I'd get it.
I'm too ambitious. You know, and that's maybe why I married you. I'm too ambitious, and really thought that I could fix it. I also had a deep faith that I leaned on. So I don't know. I even when it was hard, I saw progress as well. Like not pun kind of intended, but I did see growth. I did see progress, and I realized this was a journey. And I went to Al-Anon.
Yes.
And I got a lot of great
Why don't you tell
perspective
people
from
what
that.
Al-Anon is?
Al-Anon is for the families of people who are struggling with alcoholism and addiction. And so I went to those rooms.
There's
it was mostly
Al-Anon
parents.
for teen, Al-Anon for adults.
So the ones I attended were mostly parents. And so that was a very unique perspective. But there were some spouses there as well, mostly women. Yeah. I think most of the men were there were fathers who had alcoholic family members, who had alcoholic family members who were in their home, who had alcoholic kids, and they were parenting grandkids. So it was a different perspective and lens on it.
What you did for me with the intervention, I have spent 6 years in the rooms of AA, and I've never heard anyone else say that their husband staged. I've heard their husband left. I heard their husband got angry and took the kids. I've heard the husband threaten them, like, get this or get out. But I just realized that in this moment, I've never heard anyone say my husband staged a loving intervention for me.
Now, I lovingly low-key threatened you with, but in terms of...
You did low-key threaten me at that intervention.
I said, I'm not going to let you hurt the kids.
Yeah, you did.
I'm not
I'll
gonna let
take
you
the
do
kids.
that. Yeah, I'm not going to let you do that. And I got a family full of attorneys. Don't play with me.
I know you do.
So, yeah, you knew that too. You didn't question that one. So,
No, I didn't.
Yeah, this is threats. What up?
Yes. So thank you for doing that, because I
well,
know that took a lot of courage.
Why
for
do you think that is, though? I don't want to pat myself on the back and give myself an award. It seemed like the obvious thing to do. I think
It's scary. It's hard. And by the time someone's lied to you and manipulated you and frustrated you, and you don't even want, unless you're really in the Word and in God, you probably don't have the strength to love them back to life in that moment. You're angry, you're frustrated, you're driving with my kids drunk, you're doing this, you're blackout drunk every night, and now I gotta come in and give you some intervention party for you to get better. It
wasn't a party.
It's dying to yourself again. Like, you didn't want to do that.
No, I didn't
and not
want
a
it.
lot of
I didn't
people
imagine myself
want
doing it.
to do that. So it's easier to just sweep it under the rug. Someone else will deal with it. It'll get better. She'll get better. She's going through a hard time. A lot of people said that around my intervention, or around my father's funeral. There was a lot of grace given to me for my alcoholism.
Yes, there was. I remember that being a conversation.
And I loved it at the time, because I was like, yeah, my dad did just die. Give me all the excuses.
And I was
to
giving
drink
you the
more.
grace too. I was giving you that same grace.
Yeah.
But I was concerned. Okay, it's been 1 week. It's been like, where does the grace end?
Yeah.
Where does the grieving process and the mourning process end? To the extent that it becomes an excuse for you to continue to drink.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized that this is not going in the right direction. That we needed an immediate course correct. I think I'm blessed to have had a background in counseling a little bit, working in higher education. I'm really sitting here, to be honest, thinking about where did I know to do an intervention. And I feel like I've been approximate. I'm forgetting, but I feel like I've maybe been approximate, or just I was aware of the tactic, I guess. And I just was not afraid to confront you. I loved you enough to do that. I was committed enough to making this covenant work, to confront you, not by myself, because I had done that and that had not worked, but to do that with people who I knew you respected deeply and loved deeply, your mother and your brother.
But honestly, you did all the talking pretty much at the intervention.
What else is
I don't
new?
really remember anything else
What
anyone
else is
said.
new?
Yes, they were there for support, but you did it was what you said that moved me more than anything else.
Okay.
And I will say, I had a sister-in-law there
True.
who was on my side and said, if you're uncomfortable, if you need a break, if you need to leave, if you feel overwhelmed, you tell me, we'll walk out. And I was like, okay, there's someone here that deeply cares for me.
Right,
I know you did, but you also had to confront me. So it was like,
we didn't want to gang up on you.
yeah, and
Right.
she made me feel safe in that moment. So even though no one really said much, her presence, you picked the right people. It was good at that time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, happy to be here. If I can coach anyone else through this process, myprogresscoach.com, DM us, contact form. This is life and death stuff.
It is.
And we're committed, and I don't want to make this a plug but this is what God's called us to do.
Yeah.
This is life and death work. We're committed to seeing people get healed and get healthy.
Because God has brought us through this to help someone else.
Yeah.
He really has. Like, I have a fire under me that won't go out. I want to help others. I want to save others from the life that I was going down.
We've seen it. I know one of the things I remember too, when we first, I don't know if we were married yet or before we got married, we went to a funeral of someone you knew from high school who OD'd on drugs.
That was my first boyfriend, Joey.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that detail. Yeah. But I remember how sad that was.
It was so sad.
And there were other addicts, his friends who were in the room, who you could look at them and tell.
He was my childhood friend.
It was heavy.
It was so hard.
It was heavy. And so I think that colored some of it as well. And I know people want to say, well, alcohol and hard drugs are two different things. Like, people are dying. Like, we don't have the stats here, but people are dying because of addiction to substance. And so we are here, and we're called to do this work. We're called to see marriages succeed, and it can be done. And my wife's an example of that. And again, that's why I started this podcast. Thank you for your courage to share this here, because you don't have to. I know you shared it in our previous iteration of this podcast, audio only. You can listen to that from 3 years ago if you have audio. It was Progress Over Perfection. You can look it up.
It's not easy to share.
No, I recognize that. Yes.
I'm a career professional. There is a little bit of a fear that's like, do I share this? And someone thinks, oh, I don't want her for that job. But this is my real life, and this is who I am. And yes, I made a mistake, and yes, I got into addiction, but I've gotten out of it. I'm in recovery. I work on it every day. It is a journey. It is not a destination. It is something that is that in Christ or the life.
I remember one time at one of your previous employers, you shared it like in a brown bag situation, and you had you had a number of people who appreciated it. But then you had one person who didn't, and you had to manage that and navigate that. And I remember I had to encourage you through that. So this has been a process and a journey to get to the point where we can have this conversation.
And I don't talk about it professionally at all.
No, we don't.
My last employer didn't even know. So, it's not something I talk about, but it's scary to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable, but it's worth it for me. Yeah. And you know what? If an employer doesn't want to hire me because of that, or doesn't want to work with me because of that, bye. I don't want to work with you.
And in terms of finding community, it can be hard because there's so much shame around it.
Yes.
And sometimes when you speak out about this or a lot of other things, people can have shame because that's their issue.
Exactly.
That's their challenge.
I don't have shame about it anymore.
And they don't want
It's their shame that's bothering them.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I'm here telling the world because I want to see people find freedom. So,
but I want to lean that into the next question. So that people have shame because they can't get free, or they are married to someone who can't get free from this. Yeah. So what would you tell someone who feels they can't quit drinking, or they've tried and they failed? What would you tell that person?
Yeah, I would tell them, don't give up. And it's one day at a time. That's what I would tell them. Worry about today. Don't think about the vacation. Don't think about the wedding or whatever it may be. Think about today. Can you stay sober today? 24 hours. That's all that is required of you, is just for today. And if you do today, you'll stack days. And days will turn into weeks. It'll turn into months. It'll turn into 4 years and 8 months for me. And I'm like, what? Like, it's unimaginable. Because honestly, I couldn't go 4 days. I could go 4 days without a drink when I was in active addiction. I was a daily drinker. Yeah. So to be able to go this long and to work a program of recovery and to feel the way that I feel and to just have the joy that I have, I just want to encourage people, don't give up. You can do it. Don't let your relapses or what you perceive as failures make you hold you up from stopping again. And the other thing I want to say is, don't allow somebody else's time, like even my time of 4 years and 8 months. Don't allow someone else's time. Don't compare that. So thank you, babe. So true. Because I did that in the beginning, and I think that's where I messed up a lot. I was just trying to get time, and I want to get there, and I want to be. No, work your own program. Be your own self. Yeah.
It's not a scoreboard.
It's not a scoreboard.
You're not comparing to other people.
Because some of those ladies that she has this many years, I want to be like her. They've come to my meeting relapsed and drunk. Yeah. So it's a daily program. I don't want to be like somebody else. I want to be like Selah. I want to work my program. I want to do this for me.
I think that's the secret you've identified to staying sober, is that you've been able to recognize it's a daily thing. You can't go to meetings and then stop.
Yep.
Right. You can't. I know you've seen people sometimes try to transfer and project their sobriety by someone else. You're going to a meeting. How's it going? Right. You're plugged in. You're doing the work. How's your work going? As opposed to working their own course. We have to work our own course. We have to be in community. We can't just do it by a distant affiliation.
I've had a couple of those situations where I felt like
dry drunk.
Yes, a dry drunk.
Yeah. What's a dry drunk? What's a term?
So in Alcoholics Anonymous, we have a term called dry drunk, and basically that means that someone is acting all the ways that a drunk would act, except they're not drinking alcohol. So they still are angry. They're still agitated. They're still short-tempered. They're still scatterbrained. They're still can't make a decision. Like just still having life challenges constantly. Like all the things that have made your life unmanageable are still there.
Right.
You just don't have alcohol. Right. So that's someone who's not working a program of recovery, and that's what we call a dry drunk.
And that's a 12-step program.
A 12-step program. So there's multiple, though. There's a faith one called Celebrate Recovery, which I've been a part of also.
Yes.
And honestly, Celebrate Recovery is for anybody with anything. I mean, they have something for children of dysfunctional families, children of dysfunctional parents, alcohol, drugs, porn, sex, food, shopping. I could go on.
Right.
They have it for everything. And so I truly believe that Celebrate Recovery and a program of recovery is for everybody, because we all have something that is holding us back. We all have something that we're shameful about, something that we need to recover from, something we need to heal from. So I believe that recovery work is for everybody.
Right.
And I would love it to no longer be a dirty word. I'd love for recovery to be a word that everybody embraces, and everyone's working to recover from something, because we all go through things.
So on AA, you have the big book, which is like 100 years old. So some of the stories in it are kind of anniquated. They're updating it. But I want to point out that it is rooted in the word, in the Bible, in God's
Very
word.
much so.
And so doing this step work, right? So, learning, admitting that things are unmanageable and that you need God or, to be more neutral, a higher power, as is talked about in the big book, to work these steps. And I say that because I've worked some of them as well, just as a process of my own growth and maturation with my Bible, to do the work, to think about some of these things. Forgiving yourself, forgiving others, making amends. Like there's a lot of different steps in there that are really useful. If you're not an addict, right? But if you have a different challenge in life, that this type of work is really important, and can also give you tools to be able to minister and love someone else you may have in your family who's going through an addiction, who may need someone that they can talk to. And that's the hard thing when you have your friends, you have family who are asking you, "Are you going to drink again?" and you're only going to have one drink, is identifying who your people are. So quickly, outside of the rooms, how have you gone about identifying who your people are?
Oh, that's a good question.
Just hit me.
That's a really good question. Anybody that reflects health, anyone who's working on their health, anyone who's going after God, anybody who's going after being the best version of themselves. Those are the people that I'm attracted to. I've had a challenge. I've changed so much.
Right. Yes.
Let's talk about this.
Let's talk about that.
I have changed so much over the past 5 years, 4 years, 8 months, 5 years, however you want to put it.
The last 10 years.
The last 10 years, but more intensively,
the last 5.
Accelerated. That I've had to go through this figuring out what friends I want in my life, because I've had the same type of friends and I've been okay with the same type of behaviors. And now that I'm so much healthier, I don't want those type of friends.
Right.
So there's been some lonely seasons.
Yes.
There's been some pruning seasons of getting rid of some people. And I'm not saying that meanly. I'm not trying to say getting rid of. Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to come out like that. But just transitioning, realizing that there's nothing wrong with that person. That person just is not for me in this season.
Yes.
Or we have outgrown each other.
Yes.
Or I am growing rapidly and you're staying the same or actually going backwards. We just don't have much in common anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's been challenging to find my people, because I really have a very low tolerance for unhealth.
Right. Yes.
I do.
You have.
I do.
Yeah.
It is, and I'm sorry, and I'm working on it. I mean, and but close to me, proximity of friendship, like my 3, my close friends, very strong, very sure in who they are in Christ, and on a health journey, working on themselves and healthy. But it's been challenging because I've lost friends.
Yeah. No, in health, I definitely think I have more of a patience. Again, having been a counselor, having worked with young people and working through their challenges in higher ed and, even around education, certainly has given me that capacity. But I understand for you, your sobriety is so important that you don't want anyone pulling you in the wrong direction. Yeah. So it means so much to you.
And it's not worth it to me.
Right.
To go to a club for the night. It's not worth it and I love, I've had to say, I love you and I want to celebrate your birthday, but my sobriety and my health is more important.
Or certain people's houses.
We know
they're going to have the big...
Are just filled with alcohol. Right. It's just, and it's not even like a temptation. It's a lot. We were at an event this week that I could just smell alcohol. Everybody I talk to is just like, in
you
my
smell
face
it more than I do.
Alcohol. And I'm like, can we leave soon? It's just, it just gets a lot for me sometimes.
I know you were saying
I don't want it. It's just...
it's like making a diabetic go to a bakery and have to sit there for an hour and not have a donut, And it's just that people say, you're never going to drink it more? Yeah, diabetic's not going to have another donut, not going to have, a sugary soda anymore unless they're going to kill themselves, right? So it's the same thing as a health issue. And also, but it's also mental, and you have to keep your peace. The Bible tells us.
And the other thing is that I think when I was drinking, it was like fun time girl all the time. I wanted fun time. I'm still a fun time girl though, by the way. You know that. But I now feel like my time is more valuable. There's so much more that I'm doing. I don't have the time for a fun time girl. It's just changed. I'm careful about who's around our children now more.
Yes.
And I've had to realize there's just some people that their level on health I don't want spilling over into my children.
Yes.
So it's been a hard road to navigate because I've changed so much. And that's hard for other people because they might not understand or feel like I've kind of abandoned them, if you will. Right. But if I'm growing and you're not, it just makes the relationship challenging.
Right. It does.
Nothing wrong with you.
Right. We have to be going in the same direction.
It just makes the relation. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
So building community, common unity, right? We want to be together with people who are going in the same direction, who share the same values, the same faith. And that's important. Yes. And when you don't have that, then you have discord, right? You have disunity. And that's not what Christ wants for us.
Exactly.
And so in order you to you've acquired your healing, now you want to keep your healing. And again, it's one day at a time, right? We don't want to relapse back into sin, right? Back into addiction. We have to do that work. So part 2 of this episode.
Would have been hot from the alcohol in my body, sweaty all the time. Just so much of who I am has changed.
But really asking God to do that exchange, right, to get the miracle and then go pursue your healing in community. And that can be going to AA. That can be going to inpatient or outpatient therapy, right? It can look a number of Celebrate Recovery. It can look a number of different ways.
Yeah. So much power in prayer. There is more power in you praying for them than you nagging them. Trust me, I've been there.
You have.
I have. And not in alcohol. Let me be clear about that. But prayer is
anything,
number one.
Marriage.
And then next is the fighting, the nagging, the telling them you're an alcoholic, the being angry at them, to all of that. That's not helping anything. You're not helping get this person sober.
And neither is ignoring it.
Neither is ignoring it.